When a boy sitting in a booth at Shoney's on Route 60 in Huntington, West Virginia looked at the biker at the counter and said, quiet enough that only the biker heard it, loud enough that the words were unmistakable, "He told me his name is Dad, but I don't know him. I've never seen him before today. He picked me up from my aunt's house an hour ago and said we're going to lunch, and my aunt said, okay, and now I'm here, and I don't know him, and I want to go home." The biker set his coffee down and did not pick it back up. The boy was sitting across from a man in a gray hoodie and jeans. The man was eating a cheeseburger. The boy had a plate in front of him, chicken tenders, fries, a glass of milk, and he hadn't touched any of it. The food was full. The glass was full. The boy was sitting with his hands in his lap and his back straight and his eyes on the biker at the counter, because the biker was the only person in the restaurant wearing a vest with patches, and the boy had decided that the patches meant something. The man in the gray hoodie hadn't noticed the boy talking to anyone. He was eating his cheeseburger and looking at his phone, and the combination of food and screen had made him temporarily blind to the fact that the child across from him had just asked a stranger for help. Shoney sat on Route 60 in Huntington, Cabell County, a family restaurant chain that served breakfast all day and had the kind of booths where families sat on Saturdays and truckers sat on weekdays, and the waitstaff knew everyone's name except when they didn't. This was a Saturday. The restaurant was about half full. 12 booths, 6 occupied. A counter with 8 stools, 2 occupied. One by a retired man reading the Herald-Dispatch, and one by a biker who'd just been told by a child that the man feeding him lunch was a stranger. Wyatt Coburn was the biker. He was 46 years old, 6 feet 2 inches, 268 pounds, with a dark beard and hands that had been running pipe for 22 years. Gas lines, water mains, sewer lines, the kind of work where you dig and thread and solder, and your hands are either dirty or healing from being dirty. He was road captain of the River City MC, an 11-member club based out of Huntington that met at a shop on 8th Avenue and rode the river roads every other Saturday. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels and hit that notification bell, because this story starts with a boy who hadn't touched his chicken tenders, and a biker who stopped drinking his coffee, and a man in a gray hoodie who didn't know both things had just happened at the same time. Wyatt didn't stand up, didn't turn around, didn't look at the man. He looked at the boy in the booth behind him. Their backs were almost touching through the booth divider. And he said, low, through the gap between the booth seats, "What's your name?" "Levi. Levi Markham. I'm 8. "Who's the man?" "He says he's my dad, my real dad. He came to my aunt's house this morning, and he told my Aunt Karen that he's my father, and he wants to take me to lunch. And Aunt Karen, she looked at his ID, and she called someone, and then she said, okay. She said, go have lunch with your dad, Levi. And I went, because my aunt said, okay. But I've never seen this man. My mom never told me about a dad. I don't have a dad. I have my mom and my Aunt Karen, and that's my family. This man is not my family." "How did you end up talking to me?" "I've been looking at everyone in the restaurant since we sat down. I was trying to find someone. The waitress is busy. The old man at the counter is reading. The families in the booths have kids, and I didn't want to scare the kids. Then I saw your vest. My mom watches shows about bikers. She says bikers have rules about kids. She says the patches mean they're accountable to each other. I don't know what accountable means exactly, but she says it means they don't let bad things happen. So I waited until he was looking at his phone, and I turned around and I said it." "You've been planning this since you sat down?" "Since the car. He picked me up at Aunt Karen's and we drove here, and the whole drive I was thinking about who I could tell. In the car there was nobody. At the restaurant there's people. I just needed the right person. You're the right person." "Why didn't you tell the waitress?" "Because the waitress would ask him, and he'd say he's my dad, and she'd believe him because grown-ups believe grown-ups. I needed someone who would believe me instead of him. You look like you'd believe a kid. Did he hurt you? No, he's been nice. He bought me lunch. He asked me about school. He asked me what I like. He's being nice the way people are nice when they want you to like them fast. But I don't know him, and nice doesn't mean safe. My mom told me that. Nice doesn't mean safe. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Asphalt Angels. Because an 8-year-old boy at a Shoney's had memorized the difference between nice and safe, and was using it at a lunch table with a man who said he was his father. Wyatt pulled out his phone. He texted the River City MC group chat under the counter where nobody could see. Shoney's on Route 60 Huntington. Kid in the booth behind me says the man with him claims to be his dad, but the kid's never seen him. Kid's name is Levi Markham, 8 years old. Man is white, gray hoodie, jeans, brown hair, 30s. Kid hasn't touched his food. I'm not moving. Need someone to call 911 from outside. I don't want to spook the guy. Keel, the VP, same MC, responded in 40 seconds. Calling now. Don't let them leave. Heading there. Wyatt didn't let them leave. Not physically. He didn't stand up and block a door. Not yet. He stayed on his stool, and he ate his eggs, and he drank his coffee, and he watched the mirror behind the counter that reflected the booth where Levi sat across from a man in a gray hoodie. He watched the way a pipe fitter watches a gauge, patient, constant, looking for the number that means something's wrong. The man finished his cheeseburger. He wiped his hands. He picked up the check. He stood up and said, "Come on, buddy, let's go." Levi didn't move. "Levi, let's go." "I want to finish my chicken tenders." "You haven't touched your chicken tenders." "I want to start them." The boy was stalling. 8 years old, and he was buying time. He'd made eye contact with a biker, passed a message, and now he was anchoring himself to a plate of chicken tenders. He had no intention of eating, because leaving the restaurant meant getting in a car with a man he didn't know, and the restaurant had people, and the car did not. If you're watching this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes 1 second, and helps these stories reach the people who need them. Now, back to the story. The man reached for Levi's arm. Not a grab, a reach. The kind of reach that says, "Let's go," without saying it. And that's when Wyatt stood up. Wyatt was 6 feet 2 inches and 268 pounds, and when he stood up from a counter stool in a Shoney's restaurant, the room noticed. He turned around. He faced the booth. He looked at the man. "Hey, the boy says he wants to finish his lunch." The man looked at Wyatt, looked at the vest, looked at the patches, looked at the size. Did the math every man does when a man that size addresses him: fight, flight, or talk? He chose talk. "He's my son. We're just leaving. He says he doesn't know you." The restaurant went quiet. Not the dramatic movie quiet, the real quiet, where forks slow down and conversations lower, and everyone's ears turn toward the one conversation that matters. The waitress, a woman named Donna who'd been working Shoney's for 11 years, stopped pouring coffee mid-pour. "He's my kid. I haven't seen him in a while. We're reconnecting." "The boy says he's never seen you before today." That's not reconnecting. That's introducing. And introducing doesn't end with "let's go" while the kid hasn't touched his food. "Look, I've got his birth certificate in the car. I can prove it." "You can prove it to the police. They're on their way." The man's face changed. The performing face, the nice face, the "I'm his dad" face, dropped. What replaced it was calculation. He looked at the door. He looked at Wyatt between him and the door. He looked at Levi in the booth. I don't need the police. I'm his father. Wyatt took one step toward the door, not blocking it, standing near it, between the man and the exit. The same move the bikers had made at the gas pump with Lily. The same geometry. A large man standing where the exit is, not touching anyone, not threatening anyone, just occupying space that a door needs to be open. Then you'll be happy to talk to them. The man sat back down in the booth. He crossed his arms. He looked at Levi. Levi looked at the chicken tenders. Neither of them spoke. The silence in that booth was the silence of a man who'd been performing for 2 hours and a child who'd seen through the performance in the first 5 minutes. The chicken tenders sat between them like evidence, untouched, cold now, proof that something had been wrong from the moment the plate arrived. Donna, the waitress, walked to Wyatt. She said, quiet, "I knew something was off. The kid hasn't touched his food the entire time. In 11 years, I've never seen a kid not touch chicken tenders. Not once. Chicken tenders are the universal food. If a kid won't eat chicken tenders, something is wrong with the kid, or something is wrong with the table. That kid's not wrong. That table is." "You saw it?" "I saw it. I was going to say something, but I didn't know who to say it to. Then you stood up, and I didn't have to." If Asphalt Angels has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. Now, back to the ending. Keel arrived first, walked in the front door, saw Wyatt by the exit, saw the man in the gray hoodie sitting in the booth with his arms crossed, saw Levi sitting with untouched food and his hands in his lap. Keel sat down at the counter. 2 bikers now. One by the door, one at the counter. The man looked at Keel, looked at the vest. Same patches, same MC. He understood. The room had changed. The performing wouldn't work anymore. 2 more brothers arrived, Doss and McKinney. They didn't come inside. They stood in the parking lot. Near the man's car, a blue Ford Focus with Ohio plates. They didn't touch it. They just stood near it. Close enough that anyone walking to that car would have to walk past 2 men in leather vests who weren't moving. A Cabell County deputy arrived at 1:47 p.m., 8 minutes after Keel's 911 call. A man named Deputy Thornton. He walked into Shoney's with the calm of someone who'd been dispatched to a custody dispute at a restaurant and found something different. He talked to Levi first. Standard protocol. Separate the child, get the child's version. "Levi, do you know this man?" "No, sir. He came to my aunt's house this morning. He said he's my dad." Aunt Karen looked at his ID and made a phone call and then said I could go with him. "But I've never seen him before. My mom never told me about him. I don't know him." "Has he hurt you?" "No. He bought me chicken tenders, but I didn't eat them because my mom says if something feels wrong, listen to the feeling before you listen to the food." The deputy talked to the man. Kevin Spaulding, 34, of Columbus, Ohio. He produced a birth certificate. Levi Ryan Markham, born March 14, 2018. Mother Sarah Markham, father Kevin Spaulding. The birth certificate was real. The name was real. Kevin Spaulding was, biologically, Levi's father. But Kevin Spaulding had never been in Levi's life. He'd signed the birth certificate at the hospital and walked out the same week. No contact for 8 years. No child support. No visits. No phone calls. No birthday cards. No presents of any kind. He was a name on a document and nothing else. And then he showed up at the aunt's house on a Saturday morning with the birth certificate and asked for lunch. "Why now?" the deputy asked. "I want to be in his life." After 8 years. People change. The deputy called Sarah Markham, Levi's mother. Sarah was at work at a hospital in Huntington. When she heard Kevin Spaulding's name, She said one word. No. Then she said more words. Kevin Spaulding had contacted her on Facebook 2 months ago. She'd blocked him. He'd created a new account. She'd blocked that one. He'd found Karen's address through a public records search. He'd shown up with a birth certificate and a smile, and Karen, Sarah's sister, who had never met Kevin and didn't know the history, had made the call to Sarah's voicemail. Sarah was in surgery, didn't answer, and when the voicemail didn't pick up, she made the decision herself. The wrong decision. A birth certificate and a convincing man and a sister who didn't know the full story. That's all it took. He's not safe, Sarah said. I left when Levi was 3 weeks old because Kevin, he's not safe. I never put him on any pickup list. I never gave anyone his name. I moved. I changed apartments. I didn't tell Levi about him because there was nothing to tell. He was gone. And now he's at a Shoney's with my son, and my son is eating chicken tenders with a man I ran from when my baby was 3 weeks old. Your son hasn't eaten the chicken tenders, ma'am. What? He hasn't touched his food. He told a biker at the counter that the man said he was his dad, but he'd never seen him. The biker stayed. Your son wouldn't eat and wouldn't leave the restaurant. He stalled with the food. Sarah was quiet for 3 seconds. He didn't eat. He didn't eat. I taught him that. I taught him, if something feels wrong, don't eat, don't drink, don't take anything, stay where there are people, find someone with authority or someone big. I taught him that 2 years ago. He was 6. I wasn't even sure he was listening. He was listening. He was 6, and he was listening, and he's 8 now, and he used it. My 6-year-old instruction worked on my 8-year-old in a Shoney's booth against a man with a birth certificate. How is that possible? Because you taught him the difference between nice and safe. He said those words. He said you told him that. Sarah made the sound again. The exhale that isn't a word. Nice doesn't mean safe. I said that so many times. I said it in the car. I said it at bedtime. I said it when strangers gave him candy at the store. I said it until I thought he was tired of hearing it. He wasn't tired. He was memorizing. Kevin Spaulding was not arrested. He hadn't technically broken a law. The birth certificate was real. Karen had given verbal consent. There was no protective order. But the deputy issued a verbal trespass warning, and Sarah filed an emergency protective order that afternoon. The family court moved fast when the facts were, absent father, 0 contact for 8 years, showed up unannounced, took the child from a family member who didn't have full information. Karen cried for 2 hours. She said, he had the birth certificate. He was so calm. He seemed normal. Sarah said, that's what Kevin does. He seems normal. Normal is the tool. Levi went home with Sarah that evening. On the drive, he said, Mom, I didn't eat the chicken tenders. I know, baby. It felt wrong. He was nice, but it felt wrong. You told me nice doesn't mean safe, and I kept hearing your voice in my head the whole time. Even when he was smiling and asking about school, I kept hearing you say it. Nice doesn't mean safe. Nice doesn't mean safe. You heard me. I always hear you, even when you're not there. Sarah pulled the car over. She put it in park on the shoulder of Route 60, and she turned around and looked at her son in the back seat, and she said, You did everything right. You didn't eat. You didn't leave. You found someone. You stayed in the restaurant. You were smarter than a grown man with a birth certificate. He had a birth certificate? He had a piece of paper. Paper doesn't make a parent. 8 years makes a stranger. The River City MC started a program called Not My Dad, named for the 8 words Levi said to a biker at a counter. He told me his name is Dad, but I don't know him. The program partnered with family courts and child advocacy centers in Cabell and Wayne counties to create known adult verification protocols. a system where custodial parents register a list of approved adults who can pick up or spend time with their children, and anyone not on the list, regardless of biological connection, requires direct verbal confirmation from the custodial parent before contact. A birth certificate is not a permission slip. The card read, "A birth certificate proves biology. It doesn't prove safety." If a child says they don't know someone, believe the child. 6 months later, Levi was in 3rd grade. He was doing fine. Same school, same friends, same routine. The protective order was in place. Kevin Spaulding had returned to Ohio and had not made further contact. Sarah had talked to Karen. They'd rebuilt the trust, slowly, the way sisters do when the mistake was human and the lesson was institutional. Karen now had the approved list. The approved list had 4 names on it. Kevin Spaulding was not one of them. Levi still didn't eat when something felt wrong. Sarah noticed it at a family gathering in October. A cousin's husband Levi hadn't met was at the dinner table, and Levi sat with his plate full and his hands in his lap. Sarah leaned over and whispered, "He's safe. That's Uncle Danny." Levi picked up his fork and ate. The food was the signal. Full plate, hands in lap meant something's wrong. Fork moving meant all clear. Sarah started using it. Before every new person, every new situation, a new babysitter, a new after-school instructor, a parent she hadn't met at a playdate, she'd watch Levi's plate. If the fork was moving, she'd relax. If the plate was full and the hands were in his lap, she'd step in. It became their language. No words needed. Just a plate and a fork and a mother who'd taught her son to trust the feeling before the food. His counselor said it was an adaptive behavior, not a disorder, not anxiety, a tool. The boy had learned to use food as a gauge, and the gauge was accurate. The counselor said most adults don't have a gauge that good. She said she'd started using it herself, at meetings, at dinners, at any table where something felt off. She said an 8-year-old had taught her something she'd missed in 12 years of graduate training. Aunt Karen had the approved list now. 4 names. She kept it on the refrigerator. She checked IDs against the list. She called Sarah for anyone not on the list, and she waited for a live answer. No voicemails, no assumptions. She said, "I will never make that mistake again." Sarah said, "You didn't make a mistake. You made a human decision with incomplete information. Kevin was the mistake. He just used you as the door." Wyatt drove past the Shoneys on Route 61 Saturday. Same parking lot, same booths through the window. He thought about an untouched plate of chicken tenders and a boy who knew the difference between nice and safe before he knew his multiplication tables. Be the one who sets down the coffee when a child's plate is still full. Thank you for watching this story. If it reminded you that a birth certificate is a document, not a relationship, and that the smartest thing a child can do when something feels wrong is stop eating and start talking, please share it. Subscribe to Asphalt Angels for more stories, proving that sometimes the loudest alarm a child has is silence. Tell us in the comments. Has your gut ever told you something was wrong when everything looked right?